Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Speak, Film, and Enter, a podcast where we review and rank movies. I'm Nate.
And I'm Adam.
Today, we are reviewing the latest movie from South Korean superstar director Park Chan-wook, which is Decision to Leave. You may be familiar with some of his work out there. He's directed Old Boy along with The Handmaiden, which is currently streaming on Amazon Prime. I think it only lives on Prime. I think it's like a technically like Prime original.
Okay.
The Handmaiden, one of my favorite movies of the 2010s. I have not seen Old Boy, unfortunately, but just for how much I love The Handmaiden, I was really, really excited to get the Decision to Leave, especially when good reviews started coming out of whichever film festival it debuted at.
Was.
Yeah. But anyway, Adam, would you like to tell the people what it's about?
Absolutely. Decision to Leave. A detective investigating a man's death in the mountains meets the dead man's mysterious wife in the course of his dogged sleuthing.
Yes.
It's not quite as indicative of the full storyline.
Yeah, I mean, I think
normal,
there's probably a better one on Letterboxd, I think. But
let me look at the Letterboxd one.
Basically, a man is found dead. He may have been murdered. The police begin investigating his wife and one of the cops, who is our main character,
the lead detective,
Ha-jun, starts to possibly fall in love with this woman, and he becomes very obsessed with her.
Yeah, let's start there, because I think he immediately falls in love with her. Like he's
right away.
He's immediately taken with her for sure. Like he definitely thinks like, ooh, she's very pretty, and like I gotta, like, he's just all like instantly changes his demeanor. He like buys nice things or buys like nice dinner for her, like while they're doing their.
That scene is so funny.
It's so funny.
He's at the very least instantly infatuated.
Yeah, and because I think it kind of shows you that like he's married, but his home life like as good as he wants it to be, not necessarily, but it's not bad. There's nothing wrong with it. He's enjoying that for all intents and purposes. But there's this new object of like desire that he just can't get out of his head.
Also, his home life seems maybe a little dull, a little routine. He's having trouble sleeping. He's an insomniac, so he just does a lot of like sleuthing and sort of extracurricular detective work at night.
Yeah,
because he can't sleep, so he might as well. And I'm glad you mentioned that this movie's surprisingly funny as well.
It is.
Mean, there's a lot to get into with this, because this movie, it's like romantic and erotic at times and funny and suspenseful. I mean, it's a murder mystery too.
Yeah, it's a murder mystery rom-com. I'll think like if you really want to throw it, if you really want to throw it into like hard boxes, like that is what I would classify this movie as.
Yeah, I'd say the comedy is kind of the least prominent, but it's there.
That's fair.
It's more like there are just little surprising moments of comedy kind of mixed into the script, where it's not like consistently trying to be funny.
That's fair. Yeah.
Where it is consistently focusing on our two main characters and kind of obsession and the lengths to which people will go for love, or is it love, or kind of the difference between love and obsession. There's some really interesting themes in this movie. And I just think for something that's trying to balance so many things and kind of wear so many different hats, I thought it was really, really impressive how well Park Chan-wook was able to do that and make the movie consistently feel right.
Yeah.
When it's kind of doing so many different things, it never like the comedy never feels like it's coming in the wrong spot, and they never get to a more serious moment in the wrong spot. Yeah. And they reveal parts of the mystery in the right spots. It's just kind of, it's a tough balancing act, but he really pulls it off.
Yeah, I think in reference to that, I think all of the main murder mystery stuff at the, like I say, the first hour, I would say it's all like not formulaic, because like it does feel like you might be able to like guess what's going on or like where it will go in that first hour, but the second half is a lot more surprising, and it changes up a little bit more, and it does a lot more of this like back and forth, where the first half is very like, here's where everything goes, and like this is like a normal like murder mystery. Like I feel like most murder mysteries would stop at that point and be like, look, we've ended. Look how great. And then it just continues.
Yes, I'm so glad you brought that up because I had read amazing things about this movie and I was really excited for it. And I enjoyed the first, I'd say like 60% of the movie is
Okay.
kind of the part where you're just kind of like, okay, this is pretty straightforward. Although
Yep.
he's becoming he's like super into this woman and she's gorgeous and very alluring and kind of secretive.
Mm-hmm.
And so it makes sense, but that's kind of the only thing to that point that feels to differentiate it from just your average run-of-the-mill murder mystery.
Yeah.
Right? Outside of
Yeah.
maybe a little bit of humor that's thrown in. And so we kind of got to that point, and it had been like, this is a long movie, by the way. It's like 2 hours and 18 minutes.
Yeah, let me look.
So it had been
219.
going on long enough, though, where when they kind of get the first part of the story seemingly wrapped up, I thought like, wow, is it over? That flew by.
Yeah, like, oh, like,
because it's like just long enough to where when you're in a theater and you're not checking your phone, I'm like, how long was that?
Yeah. Was that like an hour? Or is that an hour 20?
Exactly. Yeah. And then it continues. And that's when this movie becomes, to me, goes from like pretty good to like really, really good and fascinating. And he kind of puts his characters into a box that you don't quite see coming. And it takes a while to realize that they're in a box.
Mm-hmm.
But then when you realize they are, and like kind of how this box is constructed, to continue this horrible metaphor.
Yeah, it works. We're trying to do no spoilers. So
yeah. That was when I was like, oh shit, he's like really pulling this off. And this went in a direction I was not expecting.
Mm-hmm.
And it's bordering on feeling a little contrived, but I think because the characters are so fascinating and the point of the story isn't necessarily the mystery, it's the relationship between these two characters. That's why I think it works, because it's not entirely dependent on like the shock aha factor of unveiling the mystery at the end, which
like
I think
who did it or whatever.
Right. Yeah. Although that comes together in like a pretty interesting way, I think, but because the character work is so strong, it's not the only thing that like the movie's not putting all of its
eggs in that basket.
And I think it's better for it.
I would agree. I very much agree. I like that it's, I mean, we talked about the balancing act between the murder mystery and the relationship. And I think the first half is more the introduction to the murder mystery. The second half is all the relationship stuff with like a little sprinkle of more to it. And I gotta say, I think it pulled it off wonderfully. Like I was so surprised walking out of this movie. I was like, man, I have a lot of theories. Like I have questions. I want to watch it again to like see which ones I think are right, or like why certain theories could work or why certain theories wouldn't work. It definitely requires repeated viewing to at least for me, to solidify what I think truly happened.
I think that's fair.
And only based on like the last like 20 minutes.
I mean, you and I already talked about before we started this episode, we kind of disagreed on exactly what happens at the end of this movie.
Yeah.
Because I don't know, is it ambiguous? Is it straightforward? I thought it was pretty clear, but then you brought a whole different perspective to it. Now I'm questioning what I saw. So
yeah, well, and there's other parts to that my own theory that will play into that, but it's really it really comes down to like, how do you feel about the motivations of each character? Like not necessarily their relationship to each other, but like, what do you feel about their motivations and why do you think they did some of the things they did? Like, is it truly out of love? Is one of them a psychopath? Is like the other one just like bored out of their skull and is just,
are they both
obsessed?
Crazy?
Are they both? Yeah. Are they both insane? Like so many questions pop up after it's over to just go like, well, now I got to check. Like now I got to do it again. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
absolutely. I think, just the way that they kind of pull together at the end. And I think a lot of it is just due to the performances from the two leads.
Yeah.
Because
really like
the chemistry that they have and the way that they're able to kind of play off of each other, and they're never entirely obvious with what they're saying to each other because there's a murder lying between them.
Yep.
And there's an element of, for the detective at least, this isn't really a spoiler given the premise of the movie, but like if he solves this and it potentially, if he solves it at all,
Yeah.
he no longer has an excuse to see this woman. Either she's guilty and she's going to jail and he's not going to see her then, or he's solved the murder and it's kind of inappropriate to ask out the woman of like the wife of a man who was murdered.
Yeah.
That you're
And
investigating,
he's
like,
married, and like he
yeah,
can't just spend
well,
time
that's
with
right.
strange women. He
I
can't
keep
just
forgetting
spend
that.
time with strange
I
women.
keep forgetting that he's married, which is ridiculous. But that's another roadblock. So it's this interesting thing where he's just kind of like prolonging the inevitable.
Yeah.
And so they're always in this place where they can't quite say exactly what they want to say to each other. Also, because does she have secrets or is she just enjoying the attention?
Yeah.
Does she just want that to keep going? It's a really interesting back and forth. And so Park Hae-il, trying my best with these names, plays Hae Jun, the detective.
Mm-hmm.
And then Tong Wei plays Su Rei, who, I don't know, man. Her performance was one of my favorite of the year, probably.
Yeah. Dude, I know I've seen her before, but I have no idea what in. But
Oh, she's in Long Day's Journey into Night. I still haven't seen that yet.
See, I'm looking through her IMDb and I don't even see anything that like I actually remember or like.
Well, she's a Chinese actress, so she's probably. I mean, she's only been in basically Chinese movies, or in this case, a Korean movie.
Yeah, there's something familiar.
Maybe she was in a
TV
show or something. I don't know, but she's fantastic. He's really good as well. I mean, it's yeah.
I don't know which role required more work to pull off, because she's like simultaneously like sexy and smart and like absolutely terrifying. Like if she's a murderer, then like you're hanging out with a murderer, like she might be insane,
right?
And he's this like sleep deprived, bored, obsessive cop who's like dedicated fully to his job. And it's just like, how do you balance your performance? Like which elements do you take and do you exacerbate almost to make it more believable or less believable in certain areas? So I thought both of them were fantastic. I do have one thing that I would say I didn't enjoy, but it's not the fault of the movie, it's the fault of me. So
was it the subtitles?
No, it wasn't the subtitles. I like subtitles. I actually really like subtitles. It was the fact that she's Chinese in the movie. She comes from China in the movie while also being a Chinese actress. And she lives in Korea now. That's where this all takes place. It's repeatedly stated that her Korean is very poor. I can't fucking tell. I don't know Korean.
Sure. I mean,
and
I think
it
that's
switches
just maybe
back
a
and
little
forth
barrier for
that's what I mean.
American audiences.
It switches back and forth between like her needing to speak in Chinese to get her thoughts and emotions out, to like translate it via a phone to then come out, where like that's probably very, very much more impactful for those audiences, whether it's a Korean audience or a Chinese audience, or somebody who's familiar with those languages. I was just like, I wish I felt it more there, but they're all really good scenes when those happen. I was just like, I don't get the dialect difference,
And is it poor, or is she just kind of using it to, who knows?
To get around, like,
right. And to sort of, there's definitely an element here of like men around her finding it kind of charming that they have to help her with her Korean.
Yeah.
She kind of, is she playing dumb, or does she like actually not speak Korean that well?
And there's a few times. Well, I guess I won't say any more about that. I don't want to get too into like the weeds and the details and stuff. But I want to say that's not a fault of the movie. That's my fault. All the language barrier stuff is all my fault. So I'm not holding it against this movie at all.
You just kind of there was a little part in the movie where you felt like, well, I can't totally
I can't tell. Who cares? But maybe that's how you're supposed to feel. So
I'm glad you brought up the phone, though, because that was one other thing I wanted to talk about a little bit, was how well I think this movie actually utilizes technology, which is really hard a lot of the times in like murder mysteries, like horror movies in particular, where it's just this. And I think I've talked to you about this before, where I just like, that's why I think so many horror things are set these days, like outside of just for nostalgia. Just kind of like in the 70s or 80s or 90s, because we don't have to worry about cell phones or the internet very much. And it's just easier to put characters in a predicament that they have trouble getting out of with when they don't have their phones or like a smartphone or GPS or whatever.
It feels more visceral because it's all about the human experience, not like how
Right.
have I been aided by this technology we've created.
Right. And the audience isn't constantly thinking about like, well, couldn't they just do this with their phone or
Like, why
something?
not just call the cops? You have location on, like,
Right.
you know what I mean? Stuff like that.
But this movie, it uses technology in a really interesting way. Like part of it you mentioned is with the translation. Part of it, there's people with some trackers on each other's devices. And then there's like a sort of audio journal that one of the characters keeps to sort of voice their thoughts and return to them if need be. So it's utilized in an interesting way. And it's one of it seems like more than most movies like this that I can remember recently, it leans into the technology and embraces it instead of trying to just get rid of it in the quickest way possible.
Yeah, it definitely utilizes it and it treats itself like it's a 2022 movie.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which I really appreciate because that just doesn't happen all the time. So
yep.
Yeah. I don't really have too much more if you want to you want to get to stars or anything.
Let's get into the stars.
All right. We'll be right back with our star ratings. So, I know I went first last time, but I can go first again.
I'll go first.
Oh, all right. All right.
So we talked about this before the episode as well, where there's a lot of good movies coming out now. And I feel like I've just been giving like 4 stars to everything recently. Also, just a reminder, there are a lot of great movies coming out. If you want to join us for our reviews for all of those, please subscribe and you can get a notification every time. We're reviewing as many of these new movies coming out in November, December, all the award stuff as we can.
2, 3, 4 a week.
Yeah, absolutely. So if you want to get to those, please subscribe. It really help us out a lot. But yeah, for me recently, it's just been 4-star after 4, which is great because I went through a huge stretch where it was just like nothings to me. Like like 2.5 and 3s. I'm like, they were fine, but I'll forget about it tomorrow. I'm at a 4 for now, but I am so close to a 4.5 on this movie.
Yeah, me too.
And I
feel you.
I think it's because I don't quite know how I feel about the way the story resolves itself.
Yeah.
Like with the way that there are a lot of things going by the time you get to the end of the movie, a lot of arms moving in different directions. And I haven't decided yet how I feel about how the ending fully wraps up everything in a satisfying way.
Yeah.
I think it does, but I don't know if I decide I really like the ending, then it's probably going to go to a 4.5. And I was hoping
if I decide I like it.
I don't dislike the ending. It's more like, is it awesome or is it fine?
Or am I just like, am I disappointed by what actually happens?
I'm not disappointed by the ending.
No, I mean, in some movies where you want, I wouldn't say you want characters to end up together or you want people to estrange themselves from one another. Like in movies where there's not necessarily, it's an ambiguous ending to a certain degree. Sometimes it's just like, I just want that little bit of closure, that like one line that just gives it like, oh, okay, there it is. Now I can feel a certain way about it.
Right. And I think that's where, because it's a little ambiguous, I'm still kind of deciding how I feel about the ending. But it's a great movie. It's highly, highly recommended from me. Especially, I think it's really accessible as far as foreign movies go.
I would agree.
If you don't check out a lot of foreign movies, I think this is almost a guarantee to get a Best International Feature nomination at the Oscars. I think it's great. And it's one of the best of the year. And it could go up for me the more I think about it, or if I just see it again and love it just as much. So 4 stars for me. Really, really good. And Adam, I think we're basically in agreement here.
Yeah, we're gonna say I gave it a 4, but I'm leaning towards a 4.5. And this is where we talked about this before the episode. I'm getting into trouble because I was at I did a lot of 3s, a lot of 3.5s, and then the last couple that I've seen have all been 4, 4, 4. But the more I think about this one, and the more I think about how much I like this one, and the last most recent 4s I gave, I'm like, those might all actually be 4.5. So I just wasn't sure that I really wanted to boost them up so high. And but if this is the quality that we're getting, there absolutely should be 4.5. So for right now, it's a 4. Like I've said on this, and I believe Banshees of Inisherin, I would like to see it again. I need to that will determine if it is actually a 4 or if it does deserve to go up to a 4.5.
Yeah. And
I
again,
think,
those are just numbers too. I mean, hopefully you listen to the
yeah,
whole review, and we've stated our opinions on this pretty clearly. But for myself, I do kind of waver between those two a lot, where
yeah,
once I get it up to a 4.5, I feel like I'm listing it amongst like the greats,
yeah.
or like, you know what I mean? And then for whatever reason, there's just, I find that bar tough to clear.
That 4.5 is really tough to get to without thinking like, oh, am I alienating all these like fantastic movies that I really love? Or like are
You're
fives
like,
just my favorites, even if they're like not perfect? You know what I mean? Like,
personifying these movies, just like, oh, is it gonna feel bad if I don't?
yeah, like oh, like am I gonna feel bad for it because you know what I mean? Because I only gave it a 4 versus a 4.5. But I
I
think
would
my
do that
favorite
for like
part.
foods I didn't eat when I was a kid. Like if my
You know,
mom
the
would buy
mashed
me like,
potatoes, right? The turkey, like
or like my mom would buy me like 3 different kinds of snacks, and then there was one of them that I just like didn't eat very much of, I'd kind of feel bad.
it's like, oh, I gotta go into the cupboard, eat more of those, so I can leave like the one granola bar that I really enjoy, like to the end. Like,
Right. Yeah.
yeah. I will say my favorite part about this movie is the fact that the director before the movie starts says like, "Hey, this is a romantic movie. It's also a murder movie. I hope you enjoy it." I do love the balance of smashing those two genres together and making it work and finding the equilibrium and making it just like absolutely be a well-rounded, like it's not really a
Yes.
weak part in any part of this movie. Again, I said the first portion or the first hour is maybe a little formulaic, but that's not a knock against it. It works so well for the rest, the second half of it. I
I think
really,
you
really
needed that familiarity at the beginning to truly
just get you into
appreciate
it.
kind of the twists and turns it takes in the second
Yeah,
half.
what they're trying to accomplish. Yeah,
For
absolutely.
sure.
Absolutely. So that was my favorite stuff. 4 for me, excuse me. But yeah. That's all I've got. Anything else from you?
No, I don't think so. Go see Decision to Leave in theaters if you can, and if not, hopefully it's going to be available to rent pretty soon. Highly
Mhm.
recommended movie from Adam and myself. And I think it's my turn to put a wrap on the show.
Take it away.
I'm not kind, I'm vicious. It's the secret of my charm.